Phosphorus is an essential nutrient for living organisms. It's a key part of nucleic acids like DNA and the phospholipids that form our cell membranes. Calcium phosphate also makes up the supportive components of our bones. Phosphorus is usually considered the limiting nutrient in aquatic ecosystems, meaning that the nutrient that's in shortest supply puts a limit on growth or controls the pace at which algae and aquatic plants are produced. Encyclopedia of Ocean Sciences states that phosphorus cycle has four major components. 1. Tectonic uplift and exposure of phosphorus-bearing rocks to the forces of weathering. 2. Physical erosion and chemical weathering of rocks producing soils and providing dissolved and particulate phosphorus to rivers. 3. Riverine transport of phosphorus to lakes and the ocean. And 4. Sedimentation of phosphorus associated with organic and mineral matter and burial in sediments. Phosphorus is found mostly in the form of phosphate ions. Phosphorus in soil is generally small, which limits plant growth. Hence, people apply phosphate fertilizers on farmlands, and humans and animals absorb phosphates by eating those plants. Once in the plant or animal, phosphate is incorporated into organic molecules such as DNA. When the plant or animal dies and decays, its organic phosphate returns to the soil. These organic forms can be made available to plants by bacteria that break down organic matter to inorganic forms of phosphorus. This process is known as mineralization. Phosphorus-containing compounds may also be carried in surface runoff to bodies of water where it is used by aquatic organisms. When phosphorus-containing compounds from the organisms sink to the floor of the ocean, they form new sedimentary layers. Over long periods of time, phosphorus-containing sedimentary rock may be moved from the ocean to the land by a geological process called uplift. This process is very slow with an average phosphate ion oceanic residence time of 20,000 to 100,000 years. Despite phosphorus being an essential nutrient that provides benefits to organisms, too much of it can still bring negative effects such as the growth of large numbers of algae. Once algae dies, microbes decompose them, which leads to decreased oxygen levels in water bodies, eventually killing aquatic organisms in a process known as eutrophication. This gives rise to the dead zones in bodies of water, areas where aquatic life cannot survive due to low oxygen levels. Concentrations of phosphorus result from various human activities and environmental phenomena such as agricultural practices and precipitation. Precipitation is a part of the phosphorus cycle and is influenced by climate change. Thus, increase in phosphorus levels is also affected by climate change. Therefore, the alteration of the phosphorus cycle with combined climate change increases the vulnerability of biodiversity. Climate change influences environmental phenomena which then affect the phosphorus level circulating the environment. Since food production mainly involves the environment, it is also influenced by climate change. High levels of phosphorus can cause algae blooms that lead to the production of algal toxins. Some of these algal blooms are consumed by aquatic organisms. Since these aquatic organisms also serve as food for the other consumers in the food chain, the toxins will also be transferred from organism to organism. Thus, the alteration of the phosphorus cycle with combined climate change increases the vulnerability of food security as food acquired from the environment becomes dangerously rich in phosphorus. The alteration of the phosphorus cycle combined with climate change increases the vulnerability of human health. The modifications such as control of agricultural pests by natural predators and pollination of crops wherein the foods humans secured through these farmlands are all technically human-induced. Over the past several decades, these agricultural methods have pushed croplands beyond their natural capacity to produce food. Significant inputs of chemical fertilizers and synthetic pesticides control the population growth of crop-eating insects and pathogens that take advantage of vast monocultures of crop species. Herbicides are applied to kill weeds that compete with crop plants for water and nutrients. Therefore, all the synthetic fertilizers and pesticides eventually affect humans' health vulnerability as we depend on products and services provided by natural ecosystems. The ecosystems that we created are also essential to our well-being. Phosphorus and nitrogen cycles coincide with the deterioration of water quality when altered by human-induced acceleration, such as widespread freshwater and marine eutrophication, an issue that is anticipated to get worse due to climate change. This phenomenon occurs when agricultural fields are over-fertilized with manure and commercial fertilizers which have phosphorus. Phosphorus that plants do not use seep out of the soil and is lost through water runoff. It eventually ends up in estuaries, lakes, rivers, and waterways. An excessive amount of phosphate leads to the excessive growth of algae or other microbes. Some algae creates poisonous substances, foul taste, or smell in the waters. Significant decomposition of algae decreases the water's oxygen level, leading to the nutrient influx and more aquatic dead zones. As students, we can create a research team or an organization that would investigate and find efficient solutions for the phosphorus pollution. After all, acquiring knowledge is important to inform, raise awareness, and come up with solutions to the said problem. The goal of the team would be to improve the agro-ecosystem management, specifically the fertilizer and manure management of the food production industry, to suggest better agricultural practices that reduce the phosphorus consumption, to minimize the phosphorus-concentrated food and waste production and consumption, and finally, to develop machineries that recovers phosphorus from soil and water to recycle it into valuable products. The findings of the research would be presented to the general public to raise awareness in the form of informative videos and to policy makers and corresponding government leaders for the food production industry so that they may adapt and implement the recommendations made from the research. That ends our presentation. We hope you learned something from this video. Stay safe and stay positive.